You're listening to the Woman of Value podcast. You are about to hear the story of a woman who is following her dreams and passions and creating positive change in the world.
Through my modeling days and all of that, I used alcohol as a Band-Aid for feeling so significantly less and having no sense of value or worth. And once I was able to put down the alcohol, rip off that Band-Aid, and really look at me, that's when I found, whoa, you know something? You're a really good lady. And it had nothing to do with the physicality, but more of what my intentions were, the love I had within me, how I wanted to help others, is really how I uncovered my personal worth.
Mal Duane is a certified spiritual professional and life coach. She is the #1 best-selling author of 2 books, Alpha Chick, 5 Steps from Moving from Pain to Power, and Broken Open, her brand new book, Embracing Heartache and Betrayal as Gateways to Unconditional Love. She is a leading expert on self-worth. She has triumphed over devastating life challenges, and she uses her own lessons to coach other women and help them reclaim their self-worth and bring forward the potential that lies beneath their scars. I love it. Such a wonderful message, Mal. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, girl, I am so happy to be here with you. I love you.
Oh, love you too. And I've been following your work. I absolutely love your message, your mission, and I'm so happy for you that this new book came out and it's been a bestseller. So we'll talk more about the book, but I want to start our conversation with, what does woman of value mean to you?
To me, a woman of value is one that believes within herself the contribution that she brings to this planet, to the lives of others, to share her gifts. We all have a secret, sacred medicine that we're meant to share with others. And a woman that's in touch with all of that, it's not value coming from the exterior in, but to me, it's value from the in going out, and expressing that value in various ways to those who she's meant to touch.
What a nice description of woman of value, and it describes you. So Mal, take us through that aha moment that you had when you realized that you needed to make a change and claim your value.
Well, it's happened to me several times in my life, but the most recent, probably be with the one to share about, would be uncovering massive betrayal in my marriage, something that was just unthinkable, painful. And it's not so much the incident of betrayal that's important, because many women experience betrayal, and it's different things that cause it. But what the common factor is the fallout and the pain. The wound goes right to your core when you are betrayed by somebody you trust. And that is the commonality in the situation. That is a time when I had to really start to do deep inner work to reclaim my value, because I thought it was being stripped away by the external experience I was having. What I learned in that experience was that nothing takes away my value. Only I can take away my value. Nobody else can do that. And it was one of the greatest lessons I learned, that I was like, wait a minute, none of this is what's happening is defining me as a woman. So it was a real wake-up call about value and how we interpret it and how we hold on to it and how we share it. Being so betrayed would automatically make you feel like value's been stripped away. In my case, ultimately doing the inner work, it has since increased my sense of value, because I'm able to forgive, and I've created a path of freedom through that forgiveness.
Yeah, so tell us a little more about the forgiveness. I mean, your trust was betrayed. You thought this man was somebody he totally was not. And so you went through this whole process of rebuilding and reclaiming your own value and realizing where your value came from. A lot of people struggle with forgiveness. And I just had this conversation with one of my children because they said, well, aren't you still mad at dad? And I said, no, I have forgiven him. It doesn't even occur to me to be angry and to hold on to it. But I think a lot of people struggle with that. So tell us, how did you forgive? What is that process?
When I really looked at my pain and my healing process, which was my work to do, it was not predicated on somebody else's actions, which is very important to understand right up. Nobody else is going to heal you. I had to do this work for myself. I started to understand that by staying angry or being resentful or being in judgment even was creating ties that kept me as a victim in a state of pain connected to this situation, which I no longer wanted a part of. And how did I free myself from that? So my freedom was to forgive, was to cut the energy cords, cut anything that kept me connected to the experience, to the discomfort, which ultimately freed my heart by just stepping back and freeing myself from it. So the forgiveness was for me. It wasn't for him. However, from that came a resolve of the situation. Like you, I have no anger. I have no discontent. I'm on very good terms now. I have beautiful stepchildren and grandchildren in my life. They're more important to me than the situation that happened.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was beautifully stated, and we do it for us. But I love the visual of this energy cord, and I think that people get really held back by the anger and resentment they feel. I once had somebody on my other podcast who said that she had an aunt who was divorced and said, I will never forgive him and I will never move on because of what he did to me. And she thought she was getting back at him by holding herself back. And it was really sad. It was really sad because she lived the rest of her life feeling like, I'll show him, when in reality she was hurting herself.
That's what inspired me to write the new book. I saw too many women, just like you said, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out from a relationship, still angry, still full of resentment, and saying, I'm never going to love again. Our whole purpose of being here is love. That's what we are. It's our life force. It's the energy in our body. And if we suppress that and cut it off, we're doing really great harm to ourselves as humans.
Yeah, totally. And so there are a lot of people who aren't as resilient as you are and haven't been able to find that inner strength to keep being the love in the world after being hurt. So tell us some of the other ways that you have become as resilient as you are.
A lot of hard work. I'm not gonna cover it up. I've read so many books about personal power and transformation. I'm just intrigued by what we can do as women. Really the inner strength that we have that nobody teaches us how to access or how to work with it. So I'm going to say it's a combination of educating myself, taking classes, my meditation practice, my journaling practice, using the spiritual practices that I use that really nurture my soul. And from that connection to really my higher self, getting out of the ego, quieting that voice that was screaming in my head about this whole thing, and getting back out of my head and into my heart is where I found my path. And that's where I find my true strength. It comes from within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has to start within, right? It definitely starts within, and that ego and those voices can kill you. As you're talking, I was remembering a conversation we had about you being a model when you were younger.
Yes.
And so you've come so far in your life, and I'm wondering how those early beginnings as a person whose body and outside appearance were so important to your image, to what people thought of you. How did that affect you in your younger years?
It's funny that, Sandy, I never really saw that outside package the same way other people did. What I saw was something that was homely, freaky looking, tall, too skinny, flat chested, a late bloomer. And I didn't have the same appreciation. So I lived in a very dark place behind a very public mask. And it wasn't until I took off the mask and started to look at the real me that I found that there was a beauty. So through my modeling days and all of that, I used alcohol as a Band-Aid for feeling so significantly less and having no sense of value or worth. And once I was able to put down the alcohol, rip off that Band-Aid, and really look at me, that's when I found, whoa, you know something? You're a really good lady. And it had nothing to do with the physicality, but more of what my intentions were, the love I had within me, how I wanted to help others, is really how I uncovered my personal worth.
And so many women believe that you have to be a certain size and that you have to be young to be accepted, to be beautiful, to be attractive. And so I'm so glad you're sharing this message. I have another woman who was on this show, my friend Scarlett, who is an image consultant, and her clientele, the ones who are the thinnest, the smallest, are the ones who struggle the most. And you would think, oh my God, you're a size 4, you're a size 6, you have no problem with your self-image. We all struggle. It doesn't matter what you look like on the outside. If your inside is broken and scarred and unhappy, it's just going to keep reflecting. And I know, like in the dating world, so many women come out and date and they have such a bad feeling about the inside, and it's reflected on the outside. And so the opposite is true. Look what happened to you. You already were beautiful, but you didn't see it. And so the true beauty, what's really important, how, you talk about giving to others and how important that is to you. And I think that's such a big piece of all this. Get out of our own way.
When I was modeling, and I didn't feel good about myself, but I had that exterior package, I attracted men that preyed on that. They wanted that arm piece. They wanted something flashy and showy for the night. And they would sweep me off my feet. Because I was so wounded, I bought into all of it. And then, of course, a few days later, I'd be devastated.
Yeah.
I would have been used and discarded.
Yeah. Yeah, it's empty. It's
yes.
empty. Right. Yeah. So now you have substance.
Yeah.
And you're being valued for who you are.
Yes.
The whole picture, not just the external, not the arm candy.
Right.
So Mal, how has your work shifted as you went through your own changes?
Well, initially, my work was very focused in the recovery movement because I feel totally blessed. I put alcohol down on December 31st, 1988, and I never struggled again. I never thought about it. It never entered my mind. It hasn't crossed my radar to do something different. Not that I'm better than anybody. This is a very unusual story. It doesn't happen that way. I really believe that God had another purpose for me. And I had been told just before I stopped drinking, when I was thinking of actually ending my life, that I couldn't go because I had lessons to learn. And once I mastered those lessons, I would need to go and teach others. And the fact that I needed to learn something and master it was like a hook in my ass. I needed to know what that was. Okay? So whoever was talking to me knew how to get my attention. A lesson you need to learn, you need to master. And that's what it was. And it was learning these lessons that not only I can do, but that any woman can do, any man can do, is uncovering our power. And that ability that we have to transform our lives regardless of the crap we're standing in. And I have stood knee high in the worst situations, and yet I come out, I figure it out, and I say, wait a minute, there's a big lesson here for me, another one. They always come in little painful packages, but the wisdom is gold. And so I find that nugget, I find that lesson, I apply it to my life. Voila, I show up, I'm stronger, I'm happier, I'm better, I'm more whole. Every experience has taught me something.
Which is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And anyone can learn, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people just feel like victims. And so it's interesting. I know even in my marriage, when we were going through crisis, I would see it one way, my husband would see it through a very different lens. And it's only now that I can see that I want to be around people who thrive after crisis, not people who just say, well, I had no choice. Well, that's just the way it is. I was born this way. I have no choice, and like you, I believe we have so much power to shift how we're going to show up in the world.
Well, you said something very interesting. We're born this way. Do you know what? When we're born, we're a clean slate. We're a divine, perfect little baby that has been untouched by anything yet. And then we meet our parents. And then the story starts. Not that our parents are not good people, but they've got opinions, perceptions, beliefs that they took on from their family, and now they're giving those treasures to us, and they may not even be applicable to our true nature. And that's what happens. We build perceptions and opinions, and then we use those old filters to look at our life today, look at our relationship today, look at my marriage today through lenses I created when I was 6 and 7. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, we carry those stories until we recognize, hey, wait a minute, that's an old story.
Yeah.
So how did you change your stories?
First, realizing that I had these old stories in me. I call them my old love stories in the book. But what I realized was that there had been patterns, very recognizable patterns in my personal relationships with men. And I was repeating these patterns based on things that I believed that were not true. And of course, I had this crazy thinking anyways, all along when I was feeling that I had no value, that I had no sense of self-worth. My thinking was my worst enemy. And when I identified that my thoughts were what was hurting me and causing my actual suffering, that's when I was able to start to create a new story. I said, wait a minute, none of this stuff is true. It's all old stuff. It's not current. And Mal, none of what you're thinking is true. And again, it's taken, years of work to look at this. But now, because I've practiced it, I can pull myself back from a story, from a trigger, from some external impulse that knocks me over. And I can pull myself back very quickly and get centered and say, wait a minute, that's not who I am. That's not what I want. And it doesn't feel good. And when it doesn't feel good, my body says, guess what? Time to make a change.
So you said two important things. One, you referred to your body, and your body is very wise. And a lot of women in particular disassociate from their bodies, and they live in their heads. I would say that 9/10 of my clients come to me from that place of trying to think their way out of their problems. And is this something that you had to learn? to do
Yes.
to really embody who you are?
Now I feel my way out of things.
Mm-hmm.
So if something is not feeling right to me, I feel it in my gut, and I know, okay, Mal, you're living out of alignment. It's not authentic to who you are. It's not your truth. What do you do to pull yourself back into alignment? And I start to look at that, and I'll sit quietly and meditate and just wait for options. And usually 2 or 3 things that are so brilliant that I would never think of if I was coming just from my head. They would never come from there. But I will get very heartfelt solutions that solve big problems.
So getting quiet is
Mhm.
also really key here. And we tend to be so super busy with our lives that we don't take the time to just stop and get quiet with ourselves. So I love that you sit in meditation and you allow the solutions to come.
Yes.
Because we're brilliant when we allow ourselves to stop the noise in our heads. The other thing that you said that I think is really key here is that it's not a constant. When you have a lifetime of patterns and you break them, things will still come up, but it's the recovery time. And you talked about that. Like, you will notice something's out of alignment, and then you know how to quickly get yourself back. And I find, again, this comes back to being kind to yourself and to have self-compassion, that when you're going through a process of healing, something that you've repeated always for years, decades, to be kind to yourself when you go back to a pattern. And I see this with clients. I had a client showed up at work with a work thing that she does. So she's finally breaking her codependency with her tendency to be a people pleaser and to think that she has to manage everything for every client. And she's really stepping into her power. And I'm seeing it more and more. It's like she's trusting herself. She finds herself sometimes wanting to hide a little bit, but then she pulls herself out. And just witnessing that today and seeing how far she's come in the time she's worked with me. She's a business client. She's not a dating client. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch, to see, okay, let me check in with myself. I trust myself. I know I have the answers within. So I think hopefully our listeners will take away that it doesn't matter how dysfunctional your background is. It doesn't matter how many decades, years, whatever happened to you. You can work on it. You can recover. There are simple steps that you can take. It's not easy, but it is there are steps that are repeatable that you can do over and over again.
And Sandy, you said a very important thing here. We have to trust ourselves. And a lot of women don't trust their intuition. They don't trust their gut feelings. I'm the first one to admit that in my marriage, there were some red flags, or in the relationship before I married my partner, there were some red flags that I dismissed. I said, oh, no, I'm being insecure. I'm looking for the boogeyman here. Mal, settle down. You don't want to disrupt the relationship. Lo and behold, those red flags became big red flags, stop signs.
Yeah.
Because I ignored my intuition. I didn't trust myself.
Right. But there's a good reason. I think that also I just did a whole piece on intuition today in my Facebook group. So this is a big topic on my mind today, because I think a lot of people, first of all, don't grow up in homes that are good role models. So we don't really know what is normal, what is healthy. Maybe I'm a little crazy. Maybe I'm too picky. Maybe I'm just being really sensitive. And so before you have those inner skills and understand what healthy looks like, it's very easy to not trust what you're feeling and to dismiss it. And also, we've been dismissed. We had been dismissed in childhood and by others. And so why wouldn't we think that, right?
And I grew up in a household where the elephant could be standing in the living room, but nobody would say he was there, and I'd be like, somebody validate this for me, that this
Right.
is, because I'm seeing all of this, but nobody's talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the books I read right after my divorce was about how to spot red flags early on.
Yeah.
And it had a whole section on how we grow up and why we miss red flags. And it's like our sense of normal is not normal. We don't know what it looks like. So I was just reading a book. I have a guest coming on my other podcast next week, and it's called Safe to Love Again. He has this great analogy in the book about counterfeit money. And I think it's just such a perfect way to look at relationships. So years ago, before we had tests like chemical tests for counterfeit money, they had FBI agents come into a room for a number of days and just be around real money for days, feel it, smell it, touch it. Then they brought in the counterfeit. So now we have a litmus test. We know what real is. Now we can know what fake is. We don't learn that way. We know what fake is, but we don't really understand what real is. So one of the ways to heal this is to really be exposed to healthy relationships, is to really understand healthy relationship skill sets and what to really look for. And so many people get this wrong. So this is such important work, to really trust your gut, but most of us confuse our gut with our triggers, with our past stories. It's the inner dialogue. So again, knowing what intuition even is for a lot of people is confusing.
Well, triggers normally feel threatening. They make us feel very anxious. It's a different feeling in the body. A trigger feels like fight. Intuition is more like, ooh, little like, ooh, is it true? Is it real? Not real? So it's more of an inquiry. And am I making this up, or is it real? But I think triggers are much more threatening and cause a much stronger feeling in the body. So that's one way that I can kind of decipher what's happening within me. But Sandy, the most important thing that I've done as a woman is create a really good relationship with myself first. And now, because I've done that, I really think I'm ready to step up and be love and show love in a mature, healthy, wholesome way. Not in a way of completion, but addition to my life, adding the icing on the cake.
You want to be complete within yourself and to be living your best life, and no matter what happens. And
exactly.
Yeah, I totally hear you. So Mel, what are you creating in the world right now?
Hopefully more love. Hopefully I'm inspiring women to get back up and get back in the game of life and not be afraid based on what's happened in their past. There is still so much more living to do. Every day I wake up and I have this sense of gratitude just for being where I am at this moment, that I'm healthy, I'm happy, I have a beautiful home, I'm serving women. My new book is like a baby birthing mat because it was so personal. All those good things. I have a lot of gratitude. It's such a wonderful energy to tap into because it elevates, it lifts, and it just carries me through the day in a much higher vibration than if I get up and I start like looking at email, social media, which can be poison, and get those hooks in me, and then I'm like, oh, well, what did that person say on Facebook? What do you think they meant? Were they talking about me? Oh, they didn't like me. Oh well, screw them. What can I do? It's starting a day from a place of wholeness.
Yeah. I mean, gratitude.
We deserve that.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. So I'm going to take you through the lightning round, which is a rapid fire bunch of questions, and
Yep.
so we're going to get some more nuggets of knowledge out of you. All right.
Got it.
Got it. Okay. Question number 1. It's a fill in the blank question. I never thought I was blank enough.
Good enough.
Good enough.
That held me back for so long.
Yeah.
I've healed that, but I never thought I was good enough.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this next question is kind of related to that, I guess. So what was the number one thing holding you back from becoming a woman of value?
My own thoughts.
Yeah. Negative thoughts. What I love about all your answers is these are all things that you can work on. Like once you identify these things, it's not outside of you, it's inside you to heal.
All fixable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are afraid to go within and say, oh, let me admit that I had this issue, because they feel like it means that they're unfixable. And I think that once you say it and notice it, name it, that's when you can really do the work.
You can only fix something when you're aware that it exists.
Yeah. Or you're brave enough to admit that it exists.
Yes.
What is something that you failed at that taught you an important life lesson?
Speaking my truth. In the past, lots of times I would say words that I knew people wanted to hear that really weren't what was in my heart. But I wanted to be likable, lovable, so I didn't speak my truth.
It's one of the hardest things to do. And one of the most amazingly empowering and authentic things to do. But it's a skill set, and it takes confidence and competence to do. What is the best advice that you can give to a woman who has given up her value in the past and wants to become a woman of value?
I feel she needs to spend time with herself. She needs to get to know what's under the hood. What's the motor that's operating her system, her body, her life? The more we know about ourselves, the better we become, because we're able to start to work on the stuff that doesn't quite work right, and we can work on making it a little bit better. So it's really self-awareness, self-knowledge, spending time quietly, whether it be meditation, prayer, walking in nature, whatever, but getting in touch with yourself.
I love that. I love the looking under the hood. That's a great visual. Yeah, go in for your tune-up.
Yeah.
Mal, how would you like to be remembered?
2 things. Being kind. I always try to be kind. And for inspiring others, helping them to get back up, to be the wind under a woman's wing when she needs it.
Great. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Oh, let's see. They could go to my website, which is malduanecoach.com. They can find me on Facebook, Mal Duane Coach. And I say this to every person that interviews me. If someone hears this interview and it's touched them in a way that they feel they need to speak with me, if they'll just message me either through my website or through private messenger on Facebook, I will personally reply.
Great.
Because I'm here to help. I know the drill. I've been in these shoes. I've walked through the fires. I've come out the other side. I am feeling freaking awesome. And if I can do it, they can do it.
Thank you for being such a beautiful model of what a woman of value is. It's who you've become through crisis, through being put through the fire, and a model for how women can pick themselves back up and not live a life as a victim, but as a victor, as somebody who has triumphed over challenges. And you certainly have done that. And what I love is that you're living proof that with the work, you shine, you glow. Even in the years since I met you, I have seen you come alive more and more. And so thank you for inspiring others, for inspiring me, and for being a woman of value.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear.
If you would like to step more fully into your value, grab a free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Woman of Value on my website, thewomanofvalue.com. Just click the link at the top of the homepage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the subscribe button in your listening app. And if there's something in this episode that inspired you, please share it with others, because the more we share these inspirational stories, the more women of value we will have in this world. I'll see you next time.